Since the early days of the Nintendo Entertainment System, I always longed for video games to show up in my stocking at Christmas time. And while video game gifts were few and far between due to financial constraints in the Wally household, it wasn't just about getting cartridges under the tree that made Christmas and video games so synonymous with each other. As much as I always wanted new games, Christmas holidays during the school year usually meant no less than 2 weeks of being able to wake up, crush some corn pops, rent a game or two from the video store, and get into some day-long or even weekend-long gaming sessions with my brother and our friends. Now, despite being an old man today and Christmas holidays having a bit of a different structure, I still make sure to take advantage of time away from work to reacquaint myself with some old favorites while still making some time for new ones. And while I do have a handful of gaming memories at Christmas time, I wanted to reach out to some friends to see what they remember from years gone by and see if they'd indulge me by sharing some of them with all of us. I've got 6 of my favorite humans joining me to share some memories of yesteryear and the association that video games have during the holidays. Enjoy!
It's Christmas, 1987. Having just gotten an NES for my 5th birthday, there are numerous rectangular presents under the tree that I immediately recognize as Nintendo Entertainment System cartridges. It's hard to remember them all now, but a few definitely stick out in my memory. Donkey Kong Classics, Ghostbusters, and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Punch-Out! Was released in October of that same year. My dad was a boxing fan, which probably had some influence on the purchase, but I definitely wanted that game. The neighbor kid had it, and I was absolutely floored by it. You have to understand, a special mapper chip was used in this cart to create sprites this size. There was really nothing on the NES, at least nothing that wasn't a motionless background made to look like a boss or large enemy that looked like this game. People make memes about playing old games and feeling like the graphics couldn't get better. And while I definitely didn't think even then that this was the height of graphical fidelity, there wasn't anything else I could name on NES that looked better at the time. And I stunk at this game. People talk about being better at games when they were kids, and I'm sure there's something to be said for reaction times and reflexes, but there's also something to be said for the pattern recognition skills you develop as you get older, and believe me when I tell you I loved this game. But I sucked so bad, it took me forever to just get past Glass Joe for the first time. I probably spent at least the rest of December trying to beat that skinny Frenchman, and while I can't say now for sure exactly how long it took, when I finally did manage it, I left the game on the screen showing Mac versus Von Kaiser and quickly went to tell my dad that I finally did it. I've spent a lot of time with Punch-Out! Since then. It's one of my favorite NES games, thanks no doubt in part to receiving it, 36 years ago for Christmas. But my initial love for it, and learning at least those early boxer patterns, was time spent in that late December 1987. Thanks, Wally, for asking me to do this. Cheers and happy holidays.
Happy holidays! Crash here from Serial Arcade. Today I'm going to share a memory with you about anticipation. And I don't mean the game, because that game kind of sucks. What I'm talking about is having to wait. And having to wait for that Christmas video game. When I was growing up, one of the most exciting things about the holidays was knowing that there'd be a Christmas video game under the tree. However, one year, it was slightly different for me, because we decided to travel down to Manitoba from Yellowknife to visit my grandparents. And we got snowed in. So on Christmas morning, when I opened my presents, I was treated to the surprise of getting this game here, Crystalis. Only thing is we left my Nintendo up in Yellowknife, so I couldn't play the game. Now, I did what any other kid would do. I took out the manual, I studied it, I started drawing pictures of the swords, the characters, everything I could just to bring me into that world because I wanted to play it so badly. It was painful. The waiting and the anticipation, you could say it was like torture for both me and my family.
Be honest. How do you feel?
When I finally got home and I got to playing it, it was one of the most magical games that I had experienced at that point in time. And honestly, it's still one of my favorite games of all time. Have you ever had to wait for a game that you couldn't play at Christmas? Hit us up in the comments below and let us know about your experience having to wait for a Christmas game.
Like most kids, I absolutely reveled in my downtime throughout elementary school. Summer vacation and Christmas break were my favorite times of the year, not only for the freedom from school, but for the ability to sit down and get some serious video gaming in without the pressure of sports or too much homework. Back in the 8th grade, I first came across Sim Tower at a friend's house and became a bit infatuated with it. I was so obsessed, in fact, that I'd soon worn out my welcome after inviting myself over to her house one too many times. After that, I started pestering her to lend me her copy so I could install it on my home computer. And as if by magic, one day at school, she produced a burnt copy of my very own to keep. I've since gotten a legitimate copy, but I still have the disc she gave me to this very day. Sim Tower has so much to get lost in. You spend time fashioning and tweaking your very own mega building with living accommodations, offices, rentals, and all sorts of recreation like restaurants and movie theaters. Some of the hardest bosses in the game are elevators or people turning red, but those are stories for another time. I distinctly remember picking this game up nearly every holiday season, not only for the relaxing vibes, but also for the fact that Santa Claus comes to visit your tower every in-game year. It didn't matter what I was fussing with or building when he showed up. I'd stop everything to watch him fly by and do my best to keep him in view for as long as possible. It's the perfect little dose of Christmas spirit.
All right, it is the Christmas season. Brian, when you think Christmas, what kind of game are you thinking right off the bat?
You know what, Jim? I go back to, of course, childhood. That's where all the nostalgia lies. And I'm going back to 1994 with the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on the Super NES, because that was peak my obsession with the Power Rangers show. Had all the toys, being a kid, and finally being able to play them in a game was like mind-blowing. And I remember it being actually really fun beat 'em up. I don't know if it's aged well at all, but I always think about that game very fondly, and I think about getting it Christmas morning, playing it through, being yelled at. It's breakfast time, but I just wanted to beat these certain levels. So that will always be my go-to kind of cherished, like perfect, picturesque Christmas morning.
Nice. And that actually is still a solid beat 'em up. But yes, I will go with the obsession route as well. So, Brian, as you know, my family, we always do things a little weird. And we celebrate on Christmas Eve night for reasons. But mid-2000s. Speaking of obsession, goddamn Guitar Hero. And that was the thing that ruled my life for a good couple of years. And it mostly started, I forget the Christmas year that it came out, but Christmas Eve night, opening up Guitar Hero 2. The game and the Guitar Hero, the guitar package. I stayed up the entire night and played that entire set list straight through. It was on medium. I was not prepared yet for the harder difficulties yet, but from start to finish, I played for a good 5 hours straight, whatever it was. And you know more than anyone how much I played that for the next couple years. So yeah, that's the one that's always going to stick out no matter what.
Nice. That's a great memory. I like that one.
Yep. And once again, thank you, Wally, for having us on.
Cheers, bud.
And Merry Christmas, everybody.
When Wally asked me to make a quick video of a video game or console that reminded me of the holidays in some way, I knew exactly what to talk about. How Super Mario Land 2 directly led to ruining holiday tradition for me and my family. But then I came back to my senses and decided that it was this old girl's time to shine. This is my original NES that I got on Xmas Day, 1990. 6-year-old little Weeble Spleen woke up that morning, went into the living room to see this sitting under his tree. And this is where it all began. I just want to point out this NES is uniquely mine. Note the colorization from being exposed to years of secondhand smoke. Also, the Support Desert Storm sticker that my dad got me one day after work. I had no idea what Support Desert Storm was. And the best part is that it still works as well as it did mostly when it was new. In fact, a bunch of my friends in high school, we all dug out our old NESs, and mine was the only one that worked consistently. That also could be because we left Will's NES powered on for 3 weeks straight, trying to be Ultima one time. Pretty sure I killed it. I couldn't think of a good joke to put here at the end, so I'll just go with something sincere instead. From everyone here at Weeble Spleen, myself, Morgana, Ziggy, and my wonderful wife Megan, we hope you have a happy holiday and an amazing 2024. To be continued.
The year was 1995, or maybe it was 1996. I was 7 to 8 years old, and it was shortly after Christmas. We got a new game to play, Donkey Kong Country 2. In this game, you got to play as Diddy and Dixie Kong, both working together to save Donkey Kong, who was kidnapped by King K. Rool. You traverse a giant island filled with stunning environments, a wondrous soundtrack, and of course, fun gameplay. In particular, we're going to talk about Bramble Scramble for this memory. This level was brutal, especially for a young kid. Surrounded by dangerous thorns, navigating squawks and the need for precision flying, dodging a plethora of enemies, I was having a hard time to say the least. My mom and I would play games together when I was little, and she carried us through this level, and most of the later game, as it gets pretty tough. Looking at you, Toxic Tower. So what did I do while she played the game? Why, I danced around the living room to the level music with a Stretch Armstrong toy.
Stop, evildoers! Introducing super stretching superhero Stretch Armstrong!
I still remember putting watermelon lip smackers on Stretch Armstrong before we danced around. I can almost smell it. But yes, the song for the level, named Sticker Bush Symphony, really stood out to me as a kid. It was so beautiful, airy, and dreamy. If you haven't listened to it, please pause the video and go take a listen. You won't regret it. Thanks, Wally, for letting me share a gaming memory from a Christmas of childhood past. I'm Fernleaf Flynn, and you can find me hanging out on Twitch playing retro games. I hope everyone has a happy holiday season.
There are two different games from two separate generations and from two completely different points in my life that always remind me of the holiday season. Like many kids of my age, there was no other gift on my list to Santa in 1991. Every time I was asked, I said the same thing. Super Nintendo.
Are you sure that's pretty expensive?
Super Nintendo.
Really? Because we could get you some new toys or some pajamas.
Super Nintendo.
So you want a
Super Nintendo. It was the only thing on my list, and it was the only thing on my brother's list. Combined, we didn't want any other gift under the tree, and we were okay if this was the only thing that we got that Christmas because we knew that as a poorish family, a gift of this nature was a serious ask. Whether Santa's elves could make one or not, we knew that if the fat man couldn't come through, it likely wasn't going to happen. But sure enough, all that pleading and asking led to the most memorable gift I ever remember receiving at Christmas. It was amazing. And while the leap from console generations isn't as big a step up on current day platforms, the leap from the NES to the Super NES was mind-blowing. And Super Mario World was the game that showed us all that the move from 8-bit to 16-bit was something we had never seen before. To this day, Super Mario World always reminds me of that Christmas of 1991 and made me realize that Christmas miracles do come true. While that memory in itself is one that always reminds me of the holidays, a more recent title means just as much today as that moment from all those years ago. In 2018, another video game would create memories for me during the Christmas season. See, my family had gotten into this habit of wanting to buy me games for Christmas, and while I had received a few over the years, the one that made the most impact was Tetris Effect. The game itself is breathtaking. At its core, it's simply Tetris and nothing more, and yet so much more. The presentation is unbelievable. It feasts on your senses and provides an experience that you won't soon forget, and one that I hold near and dear. The visuals and the game's amazing soundtrack are enough to etch Tetris Effect into my brain with everlasting effect. But even as great as the game is, experiencing it for the first time, it was my kids that made the moment even more special. I have very vivid memories of having all three of my kids sitting on the couch with me, watching me play this very specific stage. They marveled in the visuals and would constantly make oohs and ahs as I cleared lines. They giggled with such innocence and splendor and smiled at me with such life and pride as they got to watch their daddy enjoy the gift that they had chosen for him. I remember sitting back, watching my kids smile under the glow of a Christmas tree, huddled on the couch in my games room, and it was a visual and a memory that I will always associate with Tetris Effect, and one that I will never, ever forget. The holiday season has many correlations to video games for so many of us, and if you're watching this, you probably have some cherished memory of a game or a console that you played that takes you back to a time that you will always remember. I love hearing similar stories to mine, the connections, the memories, and the moments that seem to stand the test of time. It's part of what makes this hobby so wonderful, and I'm so thankful that these folks, my friends, took the time to share those intimate details with all of us in this video. Whether you celebrate the season or not, thank you for spending a few minutes here with all of us today as we remind ourselves why we enjoy video games so much. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to those that celebrate, and if you don't, thank you anyways for being a part of this community here with us. I wish you nothing but great tidings, laughter, and amazing vibes as you make your way into a new year. Thank you for watching.